Shalom, shalom, shalom. First off, giving our honor and praises to the Most High and His Son Yahweh Shai. You the battle axe of the Most High come to you on a Sabbath class to get edified in the Most High God's name. The name of the class is called Order Of Melchizedek. I'm going to go through the Levitical priesthood today, going to probably Father Abraham, one of our forefathers, and probably we're gonna most definitely go on to Melchizedek, touch on Christ, and touch on Israel a little bit. So, first precept we're going into is Hebrews chapter 6 and verse 12. Hebrews chapter 6 and verse 12. Get there, let's read. Verse 13.
This is the book of Hebrews, chapter 6 and verse 13.
Read.
For when God made promise to Abraham, because he could swear by no greater,
read.
He swore by himself.
So God said he couldn't make no greater swear to Abraham, no greater swear going into the promises that he gave to Abraham, right? Read.
Verse 14. Saying,
Surely,
blessing I will bless thee.
Read.
And multiplying I will multiply thee.
So this is our promise that the Lord was trying to give to Abraham. And this is how we got the children of Israel. This is how we got God's chosen people, because the Lord said it wasn't no greater promise than to give Abraham this promise by multiplying and by blessing him and the seed that was after him, right? Read.
Verse 15. And so, after he had patiently endured.
So after he had patiently endured, because a lot of people couldn't patiently endure the things that Abraham went through, going into sacrificing his own son. What brothers and sisters going now? We willingly sacrifice our sons and daughters by what? Passing through Molech, but do we sacrifice our sons and daughters to the Most High God? We got to start thinking about those things, right? Read.
And so after he had patiently endured, he obtained the promise.
So after he did that, and he obtained the promise from the Most High, man. The Most High God knew Abraham was all in for him, right? Read.
Verse 16. For men verily swear by the greater,
read.
And an oath for confirmation is to them an end of all strife.
So this is how that confirmation goes into the law, statutes, and commandments, man. And the end in all strife is going to what Christ is going to bring to the world. And we're going to go into that a little bit, man. Read.
Verse 17. Wherein God, willingly, more abundantly, to show unto the heirs of promise.
So who are the heirs of promise? Israel, right? Big come and read.
The immutability of his counsel confirmed it by an oath.
So the immutability is going into the unchanging of his counsel by an oath. The same promise he gave to Abraham, that how he's going to have his chosen seed and how he's going to set up a king afterwards. Guess what? These things have never changed, man. Right? Read.
Verse 18. That by two immutable things.
By two immutable things, read.
In which it was impossible for God to lie. We might have a strong consolation.
Read.
Who have fled for refuge to lay hold upon the hope set before us.
So guess what? The two immutable things that's not going to change. Guess what? It's another and southern tribe. We will always be here with the Most High God, man. He's not going to get rid of us. Guess what? From the beginning, it was a split, but it wasn't a split. When you go into the history of how King David had what tribe first before he had anything else? What tribe did he have before he had all Israel? He had Judah. He had the tribe of Judah before he had all Israel. Judah and Benjamin. I don't want to go into that because it's going to take too much out of the class. But we will, y'all want to write that down, we will go over that after class, right? If y'all want to get some more understanding on that. But read on.
Verse 19. Which hope we have as an anchor of the soul.
Read.
Both sure and steadfast.
Both sure and steadfast, read.
And which enter into that within the veil.
So now, it said that which enter into that which is the veil. Any brothers know what the veil is? Let's go to Leviticus, man.
Brothers should know we touched on that, even giving an example.
Leviticus chapter 16 and verse 2.
What was the question? I'm sorry.
What is the veil going into?
So it's the divider in the tabernacle.
That's right.
Big con.
Brothers should know that if y'all don't, take a mental note on those things, man. Like we always say, utilize your phone. If you see these words go into it, you can even pull up an image of these things, man, so you can get a visual. I know a lot of times we are visual people.
Big con. Because we are. That's why the Lord said we require a sign. Because we are so visual. Right? I'll read that up.
What you want?
16. We started verse 2.
This is the book of Leviticus, chapter 16 and verse 2. And the
Read.
Lord said unto Moses, speak unto Aaron thy brother,
He said, speak unto Aaron thy brother, read.
that he come not at all times into the holy place.
Now the holy place in the Old Testament they call it a holy place, but in the New Testament they call it Holy of Holies. It's going one and the same, man. Read.
It says, speak unto Aaron thy brother, that he come not at all times into the holy place within the veil
Within the veil, read.
before the mercy seat,
Read.
which is upon the ark,
Which is upon the ark, read.
that he die not.
That he died not, read.
For I will appear in the cloud upon the mercy seat.
Read on.
Verse 3, thus shall Aaron come into the holy place
Read on.
with a young bullock for a sin offering, and a ram for a burnt offering.
So it was a veil. This right here was in the tabernacles, right? But within the tabernacles, what else did we have in the tabernacles? We had the altar. What else we had? Ark of the Covenant. We had, what else we had? Menorahs, the scissors, the table for the showbread. We had all those things, man, in the tabernacle congregation. That's a good class to go to, too. Right? Go to Exodus chapter 26 to get some more on that. So we had, like you say, this is going into the veil, it's going into the divider in the ark. I mean, it's like in the tabernacle. Exodus 26 and verse 31.
This is the book of Exodus, chapter 26 and verse 31. And thou shalt make a veil of blue and purple and scarlet
Read on.
and fine twined linen of cunning work. With the cherubim shall it be made.
Read up.
Verse 32, and thou shalt hang it upon 4 pillars of shittim wood, overlaid with gold. Their hooks shall be of gold upon the 4 sockets of silver.
So it's making it like if you've seen it like basically like going into like a curtain that it's putting up, right? Read on.
Verse 33, and thou shalt hang up the veil under the taches.
Now taches is going into hooks, man. Read.
That thou mayest bring in thither within the veil the ark of the testimony.
So in this veil, on the other side of the veil, guess what? There was a divider between the Ark of the Covenant and the priest. You had a veil. Everybody couldn't enter into the part where the Ark of the Covenant was at, because what would happen if they was in? They would die. Right? Read.
And the veil shall divide unto you between the holy place and the most holy.
So it's the holy place and the most holy place, right? So that's why the Most High God got, look, holy on holy. Just like even in our nation, we got Israel, but we had also the tribe of Levi. They was the holy of the holy, right? Let's go and get another one. Numbers chapter 18 and verse 9, because keep in mind all of these things, because all this is going to tie into what we're going into today, right? Numbers chapter 18 and verse 9. All this right here ties in what we're going to go into today. Right? Numbers chapter 18 and verse 9.
This is the book of Numbers, chapter 18 and verse 9. This shall be thine of the most holy things, reserved from the fire.
Reserved from the fire, read.
Every oblation of theirs, every meat offering of theirs,
read.
and every sin offering of theirs,
Read.
and every trespass offering of theirs, which they shall render unto me, shall be the most holy for thee and for thy sons.
Well, it's supposed to be most holy for thee and thy son. This is going into the stuff that we had for the tribe of Levi. If you didn't know, the tribe of Levi did have, guess what? They didn't have an inheritance of land, but they had a lot of money, right? And it's gonna touch it in this chapter, man. Read on.
Verse 10. In the most holy place shalt thou eat it. Every male shall eat it. It shall be holy unto thee.
So, if y'all know the opposites of the Levites, what happened for the Levites? We will give what to the Levites? We would give what? Tithes. What else? Offerings. What else? Give alms. And we also will give the Levites money too. We paid taxes to the Levites, and we also went into, if we needed money, the Levites would give us money, but we had to pay back 1/5 parts of it. Matter of fact, we're gonna read down then, but whatever I said, we're gonna go touch it, right? So we can get some better understanding. Read it out.
Verse 11. And this is thine, the heave offering of their gift,
Read.
with all the wave offering of the children of Israel.
Read on now.
I have given them unto thee, and to thy sons, and to thy daughters with thee, by a statute forever.
Right, read on now.
Every one that is clean in thy house shall eat of it.
So guess what? All these offerings that they had to make for the children of Israel, guess what? They took the offer and they ate it before the Most High God. They sacrificed it and they ate it before the Most High God. Read on now.
All the best of the oil, and all the best of the wine.
So guess what? When we had oil, we had wine, we had all our substance, the best that we had, we gave it to the Levites. Right? Read.
And of the wheat, the first fruits of them, which they shall offer unto the Lord. Them have I given thee.
So he said, them have I given thee. Read.
And whatsoever is first right in the land, which they shall bring unto the Lord, shall be thine.
So guess what? Now all these things, the first of all of our stuff, we brought all these things into the Levites, man. Just think about all of us bring all of our first stuff into the Levites. He gonna have a lot.
That's right.
Right? Read.
Every one that is clean in thine house shall eat of it.
Read.
Everything devoted in Israel shall be thine.
So everything that you devoted to the Most High God, they had. This is what the office of the Levites. That's why they was holy unto the Most High God, because their job was to do nothing else but to judge Israel and to sacrifice and be one with the Most High God. Their job was to do nothing else but to, wherever the Lord wanted them to be steadfast in, that's what they did, man. That's why the Levites didn't have no problem by bringing. They didn't have respected persons, but guess what? First and foremost, they had no problem by killing. Because the Most High God told you to put this person to death, woman committed adultery or anything that was worthy of sin, the Levites will kill you right there on the spot. This is what their job.
And we can see the controversy between them and who? And Christ in the New Testament. Now you're starting to see why all these things was coming up, because Christ was giving them the understanding, and guess what? To them, it seemed like he's putting a monkey wrench in the things that they had going on with their money, with them bringing judgment on brothers and sisters in the act of certain sin and so forth. Even like with the woman caught in adultery, they was ready to stone her. But remember, Christ came to do what? Give us grace and mercy. So they struggled with that because they didn't have the understanding of the scriptures. Go ahead,
Because that's right. And this is what the sect of the class goes into. A lot of the Levites had a problem with Christ. Guess what? Because of his office. But we're going to tap into that. Jump down to verse 16 now.
Verse 16. And those that are to be redeemed from a month old shalt thou redeem.
Read.
According to thine estimation, for the money of 5 shekels.
Read on.
After the shekel of the sanctuary, Salaki, after the shekel of the money of 5 shekels, Salaki. Let me start at verse 16 again. And those that are be to redeem from a month old shalt thou redeem, according to thine estimation, for the money of 5 shekels, after the shekel of the sanctuary, which is 20 gerahs.
So this is us had to give, like you say, giving a part of our money that we make. We had to give to the Levites. So it wasn't just the land. It was like basically going into, this is like a tax, right? That we had to give to the Levites. So the Levite was wealthy, man. That's why they had the fine linens. That's why they had the best of the best.
That's right.
Right? Let's go to Leviticus right quick, chapter 27. Show y'all something right quick before we get too far. Leviticus chapter 27, verse 30.
This is the book of Leviticus, chapter 27 and verse 30. And all the tithe of the land, whether of the seed of the land or of the fruit of the tree, is the Lord's. It is holy unto the Lord.
Yeah, read on.
Verse 31. And if a man will at all redeem aught of his tithes.
So guess what? If you gave some of your tithes, or you needed to use some of your tithes, right? Read.
He shall add thereto the fifth part thereof.
So if you needed, like say for instance, if you want to borrow money, if you paid it back, you had to give a fifth part of what you paid. So say for instance, if I wanted to borrow $1,000 or $100, I had to give the $100 back plus a fifth part of it. So, like you say, it was an order to everything that we did, right? Now let's go back, man. Hebrews chapter 6. Just wanted to kind of touch into that office so you can see, like I said, so you can see where the problem came in at the New Testament, but you also can see how Christ was correcting our brothers, man, in the New Testament too.
That's right.
When we get there, I'll just read.
6 and verse 20.
6 and verse 20, yeah.
This is the book of Hebrews, chapter 6 and verse 20.
Uh-huh.
Hither the forerunner is for us entered, even Jesus, made an high priest forever after the order of Melchizedek.
So Christ was made the high priest forever after the order of Melchizedek, right? And we know that this Bible is one big letter, so we know we read one big letter like that Paul is writing on, right? He just added numbers later. Chapter 7, verse 1.
This is the book of Hebrews, chapter 7 and verse 1. For this Melchizedek, king of Salem.
Now, what does Salem mean? Salem means peace. Or we get the word, what from? Shalom. That's why we get the word shalom from, right? And also, he called Melchizedek the king of Salem. Watch this. Go to Psalm chapter 76 and verse 2. Psalm chapter 76 and verse 2. Said he was the king of Salem. Get there, I'll read it.
Let's start at verse 1.
Start at verse 1.
This is the book of Psalms, chapter 76 and verse 1. In Judah is God known. His name is great in Israel. In Salem also is his tabernacle and his dwelling place in Zion.
So guess what, man? Melchizedek was the king of Zion. He was the king of Israel already. He never was not the king of Israel, man. This is going to, and everybody know the order of Melchizedek and know who Melchizedek is. We're going to tap into that too, if y'all didn't know it. So, Melchizedek in Hebrews, guess what? Chapter 7, verse 1, when he said he was the king of Salem, guess what? He was the king of Israel already. He just didn't have the name Israel at the time.
That's right.
Right?
Let me get another precept. Let's go to Isaiah chapter 9 and verse 6. Saying the same thing. This is the book of Isaiah chapter 9 and verse 6. For unto us a child is born, unto us a son is given, and the government shall be upon his shoulders, and his name shall be called Wonderful, Counselor, the Mighty God, the Everlasting Father, the Prince of Peace. So we see that, like we say, even going into Salem meaning peace, this is another one of Christ's titles, the Prince of Peace. Because when he come on the planet Earth, guess what? He's going to bring peace to the Israelites. Go ahead, Doc.
Big Con. Let's go back to Hebrews chapter 7, verse 1 again. So we thinking a lot of times that we always had a high priest. Christ has always been our high priest. He never not been. But the thing is, guess what, man? He set the Levites up afterwards, and like you say, that's what we get all their administration, and it goes through this in this chapter. Hebrews chapter 7, start at verse 1 again.
This is the book of Hebrews chapter 7 and verse 1. For this Melchizedek, king of Salem, priest of the Most High, who met Abraham returning from the slaughter of the kings.
So he said he met Abraham returning from the slaughter of the kings, man. Let's get some on that too. Because this right here ties into history. Y'all know we're going to learn history in here. So that's what we tie into Genesis chapter 14, verse 12. It goes into the history. He said he met Abraham returning to the slaughter of the kings. Now, if you start up at verse 1, man, this what's his name?
Shalom Omer, king of Elam.
Shalom Omer, king of Elam. Man, he was one. I guess at that time he was a mighty dude. He was fighting, man, and it was five. And if you read up, if you started from chapter 14, verse 1, if you read down, you'll see all the kings they was fighting. But hey, when they came down to Abraham, he was messing with Abraham's family. Hey, Abraham had to go see about it. And this right here goes into the slaughter of the kings, right? When we jump down to verse 12, read this out.
This is the book of Genesis, chapter 14 and verse 12. And they took Lot, Abraham's brother's son, who dwelt in Sodom, and his goods, and departed.
So guess what? This king of Elam dude took took Lot's stuff. Because they took over Sodom and Gomorrah at the time, so they went and took Lot's stuff. And Abraham heard about it, right? Read.
Verse 13. And there came one that had escaped, and told Abram the Hebrew, for he dwelt in the plain of Mamre, the Amorite, brother of Eshcol, and brother of Aner, and these were confederate with Abram.
So all of them was confederate with Abram, right? Read on.
And when Abram heard that his brother was taken captive, he armed his trained servants,
read on,
born in his own house, 318, and pursued them unto Dan.
Read on,
Verse 15. And he divided himself against them, he and his servants by night, and smote them.
And so guess what, man? Abraham went to go get Lot's stuff. They went and took Lot's stuff. Abraham said, no. Bring that back, right? Read.
And pursued them unto Hagar, which is on the left hand of Damascus.
Read on.
And he brought back all the goods.
Read on.
And also brought again his brother Lot and his goods, and the women also, and the people.
Verse 17.
And the king of Sodom went out to meet him after his return from the slaughter of Omer, and of the kings that were with him at the valley of Shaveh, which is at the king Salaki, which is the king's dale.
So this is where we get in Hebrews chapter 7 and verse 1. When they said Melchizedek met him after the return of slaughter. This is after he just got finished going to war. And so after he got finished going to war, he got back all our stuff. He got back all the stuff that he had. And this is what happened next. Go to Hebrews 7, chapter 7, verse 2. We're going to go back to it in a second.
This is the book of Hebrews, chapter 7 and verse 2. To whom also Abraham gave a tenth part of all. First being by interpretation, king of righteousness. And after that also king of Salem, which is king of peace.
So which is king of peace. And we just read that in what? Isaiah chapter 9 and verse 6. And make sure brothers writing that precept down beside it. Going into king of Salem, going into king of peace. Right? We just brought that out. Let's go back to Genesis chapter 14. We going back to Hebrews chapter 7. So y'all hold y'all marker. We going back there. It said he gave them the tenth of all things, right?
And this is how you properly precept your Bible. That's what it means, Isaiah chapter 28, verse 10. Here a little and there a little. Meaning you're going from the Old Testament to the New Testament. Christians and Christianity, they just read. Not understanding nothing, not giving the understanding. No, you have to literally break these things down.
Big con. Go to Genesis chapter 14 and verse 18.
This is the book of Genesis chapter 14 and verse 18.
Read.
And Melchizedek, king of Salem, brought forth bread and wine. And he was the priest of the Most High God.
He was the priest of the Most High God, read.
And he blessed him and said, Blessed be Abram of the Most High God, possessor of heaven and earth.
He said he was the possessor of heaven and earth. That means he had rulership of the whole planet, man, right? Read.
And blessed be the Most High God, which had delivered thine enemies into thine hand. and he gave him tithes of all.
So when Abraham fought against this king of Edom, and he returned back all the goods, guess what? Abraham then turned and gave the tenth, gave tithes of all that he had. So this right here also goes into what? The same tithing that the Levitical priest had. Right? It's go one and the same, because it's going to explain it when we go back to Hebrews chapter 7, right?
So we seeing an establishment even before the actual Levitical priest was set up. Letting you know that the commandments have always been on the planet Earth, man. Always.
Because let's go back to Hebrews chapter 7 and verse 3. Come on, brothers and sisters, hey, stay with us, because you might miss a part. Then you'll lose some understanding of what we're going into.
This is the book of Hebrews chapter 7 and verse 3. Without father, without mother, without descent, having neither beginning of days nor end of life, but made like unto the Son of God, abideth a priest continually.
So he said he was made like the Son of God. He abided a priest continually. Let's go to John chapter 8, man. John chapter 8 and verse 56. Verse 54. Yeah, verse 54.
This is the book of John, chapter 8, and verse 54.
Read.
Yahweh shall answer, if I honor myself, my honor is nothing.
Read.
It is my Father that honoreth me, of whom ye say that he is your God.
No.
Yet ye have not known him, but I have known him. And if I should say I know him not,
read.
I shall be a liar like unto you. But I know him and keep his saying.
Read on,
Your father Abraham rejoiced to see my day, and he saw it and was glad.
So this is one of the accounts that is showing that he had guess what? He had no end of days. This is going into Christ. Christ's been around forever.
That's right.
And ever and ever. He's going to be around forever and ever and ever. Abraham rejoiced to see his day. How did Abraham rejoice to see his day? We just read it.
When he came from his Melchizedek, he gave him a tenth of his tithe.
So who is Melchizedek?
Christ.
That's right.
Christ. So Melchizedek was Christ. So when Abraham came from the slaughter, he knew who he met. Who he met? Christ. And this is something that hey, Christians, they go over their head, right? This right here should precept. You should write that precept down beside this. Genesis chapter 14, verse 18 through 20 should be right down beside this precept. John chapter 8, verse 56. Brothers and sisters should make sure you have that precept down right there beside that. Also, you should put Hebrew chapter 7 and verse 3 right there beside that too. So you can have that precept written down in that thing, so when you're going through, you can be able to explain what it is, just in case, because there ain't no guarantee that you remember every precept that somebody bring out.
That's right. You're not, man. I would say is man, I'm talking about hundreds upon hundreds of precepts, man. And a lot of these things need to come out and will come out the more and more we teach more and more, getting deeper and deeper into the understanding, going into regeneration. Brothers going to have a little bit of knowledge on those things to give it to our people that you teach out there on the streets, man.
Big gun in it, man. Let's go back to Hebrews chapter 7, verse 4.
This is the book of Hebrews chapter 7 and verse 4. Now consider how great this man was, unto whom even the patriarch Abraham gave the tenth of his spoil.
So guess what, man? Considering how the patriarch Abraham gave him 10th of his spoil, right? I mean, who wouldn't see your house shy wouldn't give him something? You gonna give him something, or you gonna go to the lake of fire?
It says, I'm gonna read verse 4 again. That thing heavy. Now consider how great this man was, and we see and we know how great Christ was, man. Even during Abraham's time, he knew those things. Meaning what? Abraham had understanding of the scriptures. Unlike our people today that have lost that understanding, showing you that Abraham was keeping the commandments even before Moses reintroduced the commandments to us. This is something that go over Christians' heads too. You know, Abraham kept the commandments. Let me get a precept real quick.
Go ahead.
Let's go to the book of Genesis, chapter 26, because we always got to bring these things out. Constantly got to bring this thing out, showing you that Abraham kept the commandments. It's not just the law of Moses. It's not that. It's the laws of the Most High God. Moses just reintroduced it to us as a nation. Remember, Israel is the smallest nation, the youngest nation. This is the book of Genesis, chapter 26 and verse 5. Because then Abraham obeyed my voice and kept my charge, my commandments, my statutes, and my laws. It didn't say nothing about Moses' laws, nothing about Moses' commandments, nothing about Moses' statutes. It's saying God's laws. So when you're breaking those things down, you want to make sure you're home in that point. Moses' laws is God's laws, and it's Christ's laws, because they try to separate them. Well, it's the law of Christ now. Brother, what the hell is the law of Christ?
Real.
Christ and the Most High God is on one accord, man. Christ came to do the will of his Father. He didn't come to set forth his own laws, man. Like we said, we got to stop listening to Christians, man. Go ahead, Doc.
Be calling on that, man. Let's go back to Hebrews chapter 7, verse 5.
This is the book of Hebrews, chapter 7 and verse 5.
And it's good that brothers sisters, hey, when he making them little mental notes, Abraham kept the law. Hey, brothers sisters, you can write those things down, man.
That's right.
Right? Go ahead, Doc.
This is the book of Hebrews, chapter 7 and verse 5. And verily, they that are of the sons of Levi,
Read.
who receive the office of the priesthood,
So they received the office of the priesthood, man. Read.
have a commandment to take tithes of the people,
Uh-huh.
according to the law that is of their brethren,
Uh-huh.
though they come out of the loins of Abraham.
So even though they come out the loins of Abraham, they had received, guess what? They received the office of the priesthood, man. Right? Let's go to Deuteronomy chapter 14. They received the office of the priesthood, man. Even though they came out the loins of Abraham, and Abraham did what? Abraham gave tithe. Guess what? And the Levitical priesthood before then, guess what? The Levitical priesthood gave. Guess what? Before the Levitical priesthood received tithes, guess what they did? They gave tithes too. And the scripture say it plain too. Watch, when we go back, it's gonna say it plain. Hebrews chapter 14 and verse 22.
This is the book of Hebrews, chapter 14 and verse 22. Thou shalt truly tithe all the increase of thy seed, that the field bring forth year by year. And thou shalt eat before the Lord thy God, in the place which he shall choose to place his name there. The tithe of thy corn, of thy wine, and of thine oil, and the firstlings of thine herds and of thy flocks, that thou mayest learn to fear the Lord thy God always.
Come down to verse 27.
Verse 27. And the Levite that is within thy gates, thou shalt not forsake him, for he had no part, no inheritance with thee.
So guess what? This is what the Lord was telling us. Hey, so the Levites, hey, when they took over the priesthood, guess what? Hey,
Deuteronomy 14 and 22.
Did he say Hebrew?
No,
Yeah, I said Hebrew.
Yeah.
Salaki. Deuteronomy chapter 14, verse 22.
Man, we see who literal in here. God dang it. It's Deuteronomy, my bad. Salaki. Deuteronomy 14, 22. Now we read 22 and 23. Then we jump down to verse 27.
Uh-huh.
Y'all got that?
We'll read it again.
Let's read it again.
This is the book of Deuteronomy, chapter 14, verse 22. Thou shalt truly tithe all the increase of thy seed, that the field bring forth year by year, and thou shalt eat before the Lord thy God, in the place which he shall choose to place his name there, the tithe of thy corn, of thy wine, of thine oil, and the firstlings of thy herds and of thy flocks, that thou mayest learn to fear the Lord thy God always. Verse 27. And the Levite that is within thy gates, thou shalt not forsake him, for he had no part, no inheritance with thee.
So this is how we had to give the Levites all our inheritance. We couldn't forsake him. Jump over to Deuteronomy 18:1.
This is the book of Deuteronomy, chapter 18 and verse 1.
Read.
The priests, the Levites, and all the tribe of Levi shall have no part, no inheritance with Israel.
So guess what? The Lord made them the priesthood because they did not have any part of the inheritance of the land. Right? When the Lord was dividing the lands between the nation of Israel, they had no land. The Lord, he wanted them just to minister and to be a judge, basically to be a judge among Israel.
That's right.
Right? Read.
They shall eat the offerings of the Lord made by fire and his inheritance.
Big con on there. Let's go back to Hebrews chapter 7 now. Now we back to Hebrews chapter 7.
Raise your hand if brothers are going too fast. I want brothers and sisters to make sure that they have this information. A lot of times you may have to go back and watch the videos. Don't be afraid to go back and revisit classes, man, and get a better understanding. A lot of times brothers and sisters are afraid of that thing. They're afraid to study. Don't be afraid to study, man, because how else are you going to give people the understanding? You don't want to be made a laughing stock out there. Brother, how you trying to teach me the truth and you don't know what the hell you talking about?
Here it comes. For real. Let's go to Hebrews chapter 7 and verse 6, man.
This is the book of Hebrews chapter 7 and verse 6. But he whose descent is not counted from them received tithes of Abraham.
Read on.
And blessed him that had the promises.
So he said, but he whose descent is not counted of them. Who's not counted of what? It's not counted of the Levitical priesthood. Who was the descent that Abraham, who was the person that Abraham gave tithes to?
That's right. That's a good point.
Melchizedek. So he wasn't in the Levitical priesthood.
That's right.
And he gave tithes to him, right? Read on.
Verse 7. And without all contradiction, the less is blessed of the better.
So he said the less is blessed. Going into Christ is the blessed of the better.
Mm-hmm.
Because between the priesthood, between the Levitical and between Christ, guess what? Levitical priesthood, they had men after men after men being in the priesthood. Christ was just only one man. He continued in the priesthood for forever, right?
That's right.
Read on.
And without all contradiction, the less is blessed of the better.
Read on.
And here men that die receive tithes.
So he said, but men that died going into what? The priesthood. So we know that even just like between Aaron's sons, guess what? The Levitical priesthood will go back and forth between the two sons. How one son, guess what? Hey, if he's the king and then he have a daughter, then the next son would take over the Levitical priesthood. It goes back and forth between that lineage, and it never departed. But like you say, Abraham gave tithes to a man that couldn't die. But with this that he's reading about, guess what? He's talking about Levitical priesthood. They died year to year, right? Read on now.
Verse 8 again from the top. And here men that die receive tithes.
Read.
But there he receiveth them, of whom it is witnessed that he liveth.
Read on now.
And as I may say so, Levi also, who receiveth tithes, paid tithes in Abraham.
So guess what? Levi also paid tithes. This is what we were just speaking on. Levi also paid tithes. How did he pay tithes? He paid tithes in Abraham. How did he pay tithes in Abraham? Read the next verse.
Verse 10. For he was yet in the loins of his father when Melchizedek met him.
So guess what? How Levi paid the tithes, he was in the loins of Abraham when he paid the tithes to Melchizedek. Did y'all catch that? Read verse
10 again.
Verse 9 and 10 again.
This is the book of I'm going to say the book of Levi. This is the book of Hebrews, chapter 7 and verse 9. And as I may say so, Levi also, who received tithes, paid tithes in Abraham, for he was yet in the loins of his father when Melchizedek met him.
So did y'all catch that? So even Levi, guess what? Before the tithes was ever given to them, they paid it through their father Abraham when they was in the loins of Abraham.
What do that mean? Can any brother, what that mean, Brother Ezra? Go ahead, say it. It gets said.
Yeah, going into the sea.
That's right. Just going into the sea, going into the lineage of the 12 tribes of Israel coming out of Abraham. Oh, praise for that, man. That's a great point, a good verse that I could bring it out.
Just like even that's why you get, like you say, that's what you get, like the name Melchizedek. When you break Melchizedek, it says Melchiz. Yes, Melchizedek. That goes into king and Sadiq. It goes into peace. That's why his name King of Peace, Melchizedek. That's where you get the word Sadducees from the last part of his name. Goes into what's he called, peaceable one.
Mm-hmm.
Right? I mean, or goes into Salaki goes into righteous. Salaki means righteous. So it goes into the righteous one. So that's why they call themselves Sadducees, because they thought they was the righteous one. Right? Basically giving themselves a name. Right? Go to the Hebrews. No, let's say where we're at. Hebrews chapter 7, verse 11.
This is the book of Hebrews, chapter 7 and verse 11.
Read.
If therefore perfection were by the Levitical priesthood.
So what is this going into? It said, therefore the perfection by the Levitical priesthood, read.
For under it the people received the law. What further need was there that another priest should rise after the order of Melchizedek, and not be called after the order of Aaron?
So, what further priest should we need if the Levites was the end all be all when they sacrificed for us? Why would we need another high priest? Why would we need another priest? Right? Read on. Verse 12.
Verse 12. For the priesthood being changed, there is made of necessity a change also of the law.
Of what law?
Sacrificial law.
Goes into the sacrificial law. So all this right here explains what? Go to Colossians chapter 2. This right here explains a lot of stuff, man. So when we read in our Bible, our brothers and sisters should get hung up. Colossians chapter 2 and verse 13. Read it out.
This is the book of Colossians chapter 2 and verse 13. And you, being dead in your sins,
Read.
and the uncircumcision of your flesh,
Read on.
had he quickened together with him, having forgiven you all trespasses,
Read on.
blotting out the handwriting of ordinances that was against us, which was contrary to us,
Read.
and took it out of the way, nailing it to the cross.
So now you know these Christians, they say, man, he nailed it to the cross. What did he nail to the cross, man?
That's right.
Sacrificial law.
Because guess what? Those sacrificial, if those things took away our sin like they were supposed to, guess what? He wouldn't have to nail nothing on the cross, man.
That's right.
It would have fixed the problem right then, but it never fixed the problem. We had to constantly keep on getting sacrifice after sacrifice because we kept on sinning.
That's right.
Just like we still do now. Right?
Matter of fact, let's get a precept. Let's go to Hosea real quick. Get back to Catholic. Because the Most High God, he want obedience, man. He don't want the sacrifices. He want us to keep the commandments, man. Like we do it, trying to strive for today. This is the book of Hosea, chapter 6 and verse 6. And this is what the Most High God wants, man. Hosea 6 and 6. For I desire mercy and not sacrifice, and the knowledge of God more than burnt offerings. So we know that the knowledge of God is going into what? His laws, statutes, and commandments. The Most High God don't want you to bring a sacrifice. He wants you to do what? Keep the commandments the first time. So you don't have to bring a sacrifice. That's what these things were intended for. But then our people got accustomed to doing, oh, okay, I can bring this sacrifice to atone for this. Hey, now I'm going to start putting things away so that, hey, I can already have myself covered. I mean, it was no use to us, man, because it took us away from keeping the commandments. Go ahead, Doc.
Let's go back to Colossians chapter 2.
This is the book of Colossians chapter 2 and verse 14.
And make sure, brothers and sisters, man, write these precepts down.
That's right, man.
Verse 2 and chapter 2, verse 15.
This is the book of Colossians chapter 2 and verse 15. And having spoiled principalities and powers,
Read.
he made an show of them openly, triumphing over them in it.
So guess what? Christ triumphed over. Guess what? That sacrificial law, because he openly died for the nation of Israel, was the ultimate sacrifice. He gave his life for it. That's how he nailed this thing to the cross, man. Because we kept atoning for sin, and guess what? We was dying, and then the things that were contrary to us, that we kept dying. And guess what? If a person was a homosexual, 2 or 3 witnesses, that person was stoned. Those things killed us instantly. We had no, guess what? We didn't have no leeway out of those things. But now it's homosexuality running rampant. And why they not dying? Because guess what? We're up on the grace. This is what grace used for, guess what, to get it right. It ain't for you to stay. I'm up on the grace, but it's for you. You think it's for you to stay? Ain't nothing grace gave. You can't name nothing in this world that grace lasts forever then. Name a bill when they say they gave you grace that it lasts forever. You can't name it, right?
And the thing is, Christ openly triumphed over them by doing what? Let's go to Acts chapter 1 and verse 2 and 3. Let's show how he also made an open show of them, man. This is the book of Acts chapter 1 and verse 2. Until the day in which he was taken up. After that, he, through the Holy Ghost, had given commandments unto the apostles whom he had chosen. Going into Christ. Verse 3 is the point. To whom also he showed himself alive after his passion, by many infallible proofs, being seen of them 40 days, and speaking of the things pertaining to the kingdom of God. So Christ made an open show and triumphed over them by being what? Being raised from the dead and being seen for 40 days. So they couldn't say it was a magic trick. No, man. He accidentally rose up. No. Christ walked the earth for what? A month and 10 days, man. So it wasn't no way that could have been an act. No, he literally was doing that. Don't you know how that made the chief priests and the scribes feel like, man, we got to put him to death again, man. Just that hatred that they had for him, man. Go ahead, Doc.
Be calling on that, man. Go back to Colossians 2 and 16.
This is the book of Colossians chapter 2 and verse 16. Let no man therefore judge you in meat or in drink,
Read on.
or in respect of an holy day, or of the new moon, or of the Sabbath day.
What is this going into? Any brother know?
Don't be scared. Don't be scared, because we done touched on this a couple of times. Barakai, what is it going into? Stay with us. Leave them videos alone on your time. It's the Lord's time. What you got, Noah? What is this going into? We done touched on this before, man. Brothers not taking good notes, man.
Y'all make sure y'all write this down beside that. Ezekiel chapter 45 and verse 17. And we finna go there. So he's saying that I can do my high holy day anytime I want to. No, he gave us a appointed time to do those things. We can't change that. Right? But this is what this is going into. Ezekiel chapter 45 and verse 17. Get there, let's read.
This is the book of Ezekiel, chapter 45 and verse 17. And it shall be the prince's part.
So who is the prince? Yeah, have a shot, man. Read.
To give burnt offerings and meat offerings and drink offerings in the feast.
In the feast, read.
And in the new moons and in the Sabbaths. In all solemnities of the house of Israel.
Read.
He shall prepare the sin offering and the meat offering and the burnt offering and the peace offerings to make reconciliation for the house of Israel.
So guess what? Christ was that person that gave all those offerings that we don't need anymore, man, for those high holy days. Because Christ came, and that's why he said, don't judge no man in those things, because we don't need those things, because Christ fulfilled those things. Those are the things.
Let me see. We're going to go back to Colossians real quick. I'm going to see if brothers paying attention. Colossians chapter 2, verse 16. Let no man therefore judge you in meat. Meat what? Meat offering. In drink what? In drink offering, or in respect of an holy day, what? Offering, new moon offerings, or Sabbath days offerings. Christians will use this to say that, guess what? Hey, I can celebrate whenever I want to. I can eat when I want to. I can drink whatever the hell I want to. That is not what this is talking about, man. This is talking about drink and meat offerings on the high holy days. That's all that is going into offerings. Not that you can do whatever the hell you want to and celebrate these laws, statutes, and commandments how the hell you want to. Brothers and sisters, understand that?
Yeah.
Make sure y'all write that down, man.
Big come, verse 17.
Verse 17. Which are a shadow of things to come.
Because when the Levitical priesthood was given offering for those things, those was a shadow of a thing to come. What is the thing to come? Read on.
But the body is of Christ.
But the body is of Christ. Christ was the one that gave his body for those things. All those offerings. Brothers and sisters, get that. Let's go back to Hebrews chapter 7. Hebrews chapter 7 and verse 12. No, matter of fact, no, I want some more of that. Go to James chapter 2. Because these questions do come up all the time. James chapter 2. Verse 10.
This is the book of James, chapter 2 and verse 10. For whosoever shall keep the whole law and yet offend in one point, he is guilty of all.
What is that going into?
Who can break it down? I touched on some heavy stuff today, man. I'm talking about on multiple fronts, going over regeneration and going over Christian strongholds, man. This is the book of James. We damn sure can. James chapter 2, verse 10. For whosoever shall keep the whole law and yet offend in one point, he is guilty of all.
What is that saying? No, it's not good.
That's going into Matthew 4 and 19.
What's that saying?
Where it's telling you that it sounds like it's saying that we don't have to keep law, but we do have to keep all the law. It's telling us to keep all the law.
You had your chance.
Go ahead, Rezatok. You had your chance. What you got, Rezatok?
So it's talking about basically if you're trying to keep the sacrificial law or trying to be over righteous, then if you break one of these commandments, you're gonna be guilty of all.
Exactly. If you're trying to still keep the sacrificial law, you will be guilty of all. So then you're going to go to the judgments that come with the sacrificial law. The sacrificial law also goes into, what do we say? Damn, I just lost my thought. Damn it. Somebody here. With no mercy. Damn it. Damn it. Not that. Damn it, I gotta find it, man.
But like you say, he said, whosoever keep the whole law. That's the reason why.
Oh, I got it. Tooth for a tooth, eye for an eye. It goes into that. Because a lot of times, even with the, thanks for helping me out too, even with, like we say, brothers, for certain sins you couldn't atone for. So now, if you're trying to keep the sacrificial law, hey, if something happened, if you caught in adultery, your blood had to be spilled. Brothers caught in homosexuality, sisters caught in homosexuality, your blood has to be spilled. You no longer can go to Christ for mercy. And that's why we always shoot shots at Old Testament Israelites. What you got, Joe?
Verse 11.
And which one? 11 and what?
2 and 11. James 2 and 11, next verse.
Oh, yeah. That's
Oh.
what he's going into.
Go ahead. No, that's all. I just wanted to make that point.
Big con on that. But like you say, this right, and like I said, verse 11 do touch on that, verse 11 and 12. But going into, he said, whosoever keep the whole law. So, and Christians are pulled there too. To what? To deceive themselves, man. That's why I said, that's why Hebrews 7 said it goes into the, guess what? It was a necessity that it must have been a change of the law, man. Why? Because guess what? Like you say, eye for eye, tooth for tooth. You's gonna die in your sin. Whatever, hey, if it was you did anything worthy to death, you's gonna die.
Just think about it, man. Idolatry. Worshiping, wearing crosses, worshiping other gods, brothers and sisters missing the Sabbath. That thing was heavy, man. You got put to death. That's how serious us keeping the commandments is. That we just just free love. I'm
Really
gonna miss. Hey, man. Hey, this is an opportunity to get these things right, man. So even like Ak is going into, hey, we needed Christ for these things because things do happen. We understand that, but it's not a license to sin, to keep sinning.
That's right. Let's go to Romans chapter 3, verse 19.
Let's say that Romans.
3 and 19.
This is the book of Romans, chapter 3 and verse 19.
Uh-huh.
Now we know that what things soever the law said, it said to them who are under the law,
Read.
that every mouth may be stopped, and all the world may become guilty before God.
Read.
Verse 20. Therefore, by the deeds of the law, there shall no flesh be justified in his sight. For by the law is the knowledge of sin.
He said, by verse 20 is heavy, man.
It is. Verse 19 heavy.
It's heavy than the mud. Let's read it again. See if brothers and sisters can catch it.
This is the book of Romans. I ain't gonna lie, man. I'm excited. I'm pumping the mud up in this thing. This is a good class. This is the book of Romans, chapter 3, verse 19. Now we know that what things soever the law said, is said to them who are under the law.
So who was this talking to?
Israel.
What precept? But it's got to be with it. Come on with it, Brother Charles.
Romans 7,
Brother Rezatok.
Psalm 147, 14.
All praises. Is it 147? You right? Oh, that don't sound right. Brother Noah, what you got? Sit. What you say? Come on with it, man. Don't be scared. 19.
19. 14.
Yeah, that didn't sound right, man. So, like we said, we're training brothers and sisters to remember these things because once you encounter a Christian, if you're trained on these things, you don't have to get ready. The scriptures tell us to always be instant in season, out of season. Always be ready to give an answer. That's why we literally do these things to prepare brothers that go out there and teach and that these questions you may encounter amongst Christians. This is the book of Romans, chapter 3 and verse 19. Now we know that what things soever the law said, it said to them who are under the law.
Read.
That every mouth may be stopped.
Because guess what? He said, the law, guess what? It did stop every mouth. It means we're going into the things that you did, like you say, eye for eye, tooth for a tooth. Guess what? The law will stop anybody in your tracks because you had to pay for those things right then and there. But now, what are we up under right now? Grace. That's why people's mouths is not being stopped. That's why people openly, like you say, do everything in front of the Most High without no regard. Right? Go ahead, Doc.
And all the world may become guilty before God.
Read.
Verse 20. Therefore, by the deeds of the law, there shall no flesh be justified in his sight.
Because now, guess what? They doing things openly before God. That's why the whole world guilty before God. That's why no flesh can be justified before the Most High God. Because now the Lord requiring us to what? Walk in the Spirit. Being led by the Spirit. Guess what? Letting the Spirit lead us and guide us by keeping God's laws, man, right?
Hold up. Y'all know what we're going to touch on. What are the deeds of the law?
Go ahead, Doc.
What are the deeds of the law, brothers? We done touched on this before. Because we done broke down Romans. We done broke down Galatians. What are the deeds of the law? Who want to take a shot at it, man? Who want to take a shot, man? Nobody? Everybody. Say it again, Brother Charles. The deeds of the law.
Sacrifices.
That's right, It's going into the sacrifices. That is the deeds of the law. Ox shooting and he's scoring today, man. That is the deeds of the law, meaning what? The works of the law. Like we say, by you sacrificing, you will not be justified today. Your justification comes by you having faith in Christ and keeping the other four sections of the laws. So you got the sacrificial law on how we atone for sin. You got the moral law on how you deal with your brothers. You got the dietary law on foods we can and cannot eat. The ceremonial laws on how we celebrate God's high holy day, and the civil laws on how we deal with restitution amongst our nation. But it's got to write them things down. Make sure they have it.
Big con. Read on.
This is the book of Romans chapter 3 and verse 20. Therefore, by the deeds of the law, there shall no flesh be justified in his sight. For by the law is the knowledge of sin.
So guess what? If we did not know law, we wouldn't know what sin is.
Mm-hmm.
We'd just be doing it all the time.
That's right.
So they had to make it plain on table so we can know. But now, guess what? In the new covenant, when we cross over fully into the new covenant, guess what? We're going to always have it in us, man, because the Lord said, I wrote it down for these niggas still don't get it. So I've got to put it in them, man. Just like I did the sun go rise up and sets like I tell them to do everything. The wind blow when I tell it to do, the grass grow, do how. The only thing don't do what I tell them to do is these Israel niggas. Israel niggas.
Who got a precept for verse 20? See what brothers is thinking, man. Put on your brother. Damn, that brother good today. That brother on fire, man. Brothers and sisters, put Romans 7 and 7 real quick right there. That thing is heavy, man. But like we say, for Christians, they talking about, we ain't got to keep the law. Well, you have no understanding about sin. So you just near-willy committing sin.
Matter of fact, let's go to Romans 7, man. Let's start at verse 4 right quick.
All right.
Because this cover, man, like you say, these things right here cover a lot, man. Right?
What you want? Verse 4?
Yeah, start at verse 4.
Jump down. This is the book of Romans chapter 7 and verse 1. Know ye not, brethren, for I speak to them that know the law, how that the law had dominion over a man as long as he liveth. Yeah, I'm starting at verse 1. Stay with me.
Yeah, he said verse 1.
I said verse 1. Stay with me. Verse 1. Romans chapter 7 and verse 1. Know ye not, brethren, for I speak to them that know the law, how that the law had dominion over a man as long as he liveth. Jumping down to verse 4. Wherefore, my brethren, ye also are become dead to the law by the body of Christ.
So dead to what law, man?
All praise.
Because like you say, when you reading these things, it'd be hard to understand when you ain't got no understanding of what scriptures goes into.
That's right.
Right? Read on up.
That ye should be married to another, even to him who is raised from the dead.
Read.
That we should bring forth fruit unto God.
Fruits unto God, read.
Verse 5. For when we were in the flesh, the motions of sin, which were by the law, did work in our members to bring forth fruit unto death.
So guess what? When we was walking in the flesh, that's why I said, can no flesh be justified? Because when we was walking through the flesh, guess what? You can't justify it. Because when you walk with the Most High God, you can't walk in the flesh. You got to walk in the spirit with Him, man. Right? Because when we walk in the flesh, guess what? We brought forth what? Death. It's explaining to you what it's reading in the verse. So, verse 5. So when we walk, read verse 5 again, because that's real heavy, man.
Verse 5. For when we were in the flesh.
So keep in mind, when you walking in the flesh, right? Read.
The motions of sin. Which were by the law,
read.
Did work in our members to bring forth fruit unto death.
Because what? The wages of sin is what? Death, right? We know that Romans 6 and 23, you just read up a little bit, and it says that Romans 6 and 23, the wages of sin is death. Right? Read on up.
Verse 6, but now we are delivered from the law.
But now we delivered. What law? Sacrificial.
That's right. Because the point is jumping up to verse 1. So what is the Bible contradicting itself? It's literally telling us that the law had dominion over a man as long as he lived. So that's why even, like we say, we keep homing in the point. Here a little and there a little. Like we say, we learn precept upon precept, but brothers got to also understand the context in the chapter. It's literally breaking it down for you. So you ain't going to read verse 1, then get to verse 5. Well, damn, we ain't got to keep the law now. No, that's not what they're saying. That's why Paul's letters are hard to be understood.
See, but guess what? He's talking to them that know the law.
That's right.
So if you don't know no better, then guess what? It's going to always catch you up, man.
That's right. That's a great point.
Right? Read on, Doc.
Verse 6 from the top. But now we are delivered from the law, that being dead, wherein we were held, that we should serve in newness of spirit, and not in the oldness of the letter.
So now, this goes into what we breaking down in Hebrews chapter 7, right? It goes down clearly to break those things down. Read verse 7.
Hold up. What is the oldness of the letter? Say it again. The whole point is just going into the sacrificial law
Going into the sacrificial.
and the law of sin and death. We got to put that in there too.
Become.
Meaning certain sins you couldn't atone for, you were instantly put to death. But now we have an opportunity to make it with all sins.
Become.
Verse 7. What shall we say then? Is the law sin?
Mm-hmm.
God forbid.
Come on, man.
Nay, I had not known sin but by the law.
Read on.
For I had not known lust except the law had said, thou shalt not covet.
So this is man, I don't understand. This is common sense.
That's right.
Guess what, man? If a child will put a fork in a socket, he won't know it's wrong until, guess what?
He gets shot.
He gets shot. Well, nah, I don't supposed to do that. Guess what? The Lord making it plain so we won't get shocked. Hey, don't do that because it's going to shock you.
That's right.
But if you do it anyway, it shock you. He tell you, hey, that's why the law was written down for us. Guess what? So we won't get shocked. Like a little kid with a fork in a plug. Guess what? Telling you before something happened, don't do it. This is going to happen to you. Tell us plain. I'm saying it again. Don't do this. This is going to happen to you. It makes it plain, right?
That's right.
Let's go to Galatians chapter 2. Now, we got to touch on all of these. Got to. Because these right here, these little questions, brothers and sisters, hey, we need to know how to combat these things, man.
That's right.
But some of these, Galatians chapter 2 and verse 21.
This is the book of Galatians, chapter 2 and verse 21.
So many Christians hang you brothers out there, man. Hang you brothers smooth out there, especially when you unlearn, man.
That's right.
Read that.
This is the book of Galatians, chapter 2 and verse 21. I do not frustrate the grace of God.
Uh-huh.
For if righteousness come by the law, then Christ is dead in vain.
So it said righteousness came by the if righteousness came by the law, then Christ is dead in vain. What does that mean to brothers?
Christ is the ultimate.
Everybody don't speak at once.
What you say, Joe?
I said Christ is the ultimate sacrifice. He is that.
I
He is
need
the
more on this.
So you're basically saying that the sacrificial law is the righteousness. Christ is
All praise, God.
Yeah, that's basically what they're going into. We give
All
you that.
praise.
But like I was saying, it's saying that if the sacrifice, the sacrifice that we gave the Levites, if it justified or if it made us righteous, then guess what? Christ, we wouldn't even need Christ. For what? Why would we need Christ? We just keep on giving the Levites 2 turtle doves and we've been all right.
That's right.
Or a ram or something, you know, and we've been good, right? We need to, like you said, we need to know how to break these things down. Galatians 3 and 11.
This is the book of Galatians, chapter 3 and verse 11. But that no man is justified by the law in the sight of God.
So no man is justified by the law in the sight of God. Man, read.
It is evident, for the just man shall live by faith.
So the just shall live by faith. These is about, I'm telling you, man, it's some shit like I'm reading these scriptures and like I'm talking to my mama or something. For real.
These are scriptures that, hey, they struggle with, man.
They
Every
struggle.
single one that I can bring it out, man.
Guess what?
Praise him.
And brothers in the truth struggle with these things.
Yeah, that's right.
They call, Cal, man, what does this mean? Do you know the law, brother? Well, yeah, I know the law. I said, so tell me what it means. Brothers struggle, right? We struggle with these things. It said, but that no man is justified by the law in the sight of God. It is evident, for the just shall live by faith. This is what we walking into, man, right? Because it's going to explain itself. Read on now.
Verse 12.
Mm-hmm.
And the law is not of faith,
Uh-huh.
but the man that doeth them shall live in them.
Uh-huh. Read.
Christ have redeemed us from the curse of the law.
So all this is going into, he said Christ has redeemed us from the curse of the law, man. Right? Read.
Being made a curse for us.
Being made a curse for us, read.
It is written, cursed is everyone that hangeth on a tree.
What is that going into?
Brother Noah, Brother Noah. What is this going into? Because we done touched on this SHIT in Camp 101. What you got? I know I'm gunning for Noah, I'm gunning for Razatok, and I'm gunning for Ezra. Because we done touched on this thing, even when y'all was up there teaching, and I posed that question to y'all. So y'all know I'm gunning for y'all, man. Look at brothers looking down. I don't want to look at brother in the eye. What is it going into? No, I know you done took good notes. Don't let me down, brother. Brother Darren, you next. What is this going into? What is the curse of the law? All praises, man. All praises. Deuteronomy 27. Going into the curses. The judgments that we get for breaking God's commandments. That is what the curse of the law is. Go ahead.
And make sure they write their wood down beside that. Now, what did he just say?
Deuteronomy 27 and 26.
Yeah, I know Deuteronomy 14, you got some in there too. But make sure you write that 27, hey, it's heavy. Right. Read on, up.
Verse 13. Christ had redeemed us from the curse of the law, being made a curse for us. For it is written, cursed is everyone that hangeth on a tree.
Deuteronomy 21:23. Read on.
That the blessing of Abraham might come on the Gentiles through Yahushua Christ.
Uh-oh, they stomped us. How they stomp us, y'all? How could they try to stomp us anyway? Gentile.
Mm-hmm.
Who was the Gentiles that's talking about then? Right here.
Did you jump the gun?
Oh, my bad.
Who was the Gentile?
You
You in the spirit though,
yeah.
You right, but you
It
jumped
goes
the
to the
gun.
next part.
That we might receive the promise of the Spirit through faith. So Brother Keenan was right going into Romans chapter 9 verse 4. Who are the promises for? But even like I was going back to the Gentiles that it's talking about is going into who? The northern tribe.
Big con. Watch this. Read on now.
Verse 15. Brethren, I speak after the manner of men,
Read.
though it be but a man's covenant. Yet if it be confirmed, no man disannul it, or add it thereto.
So no man can disannul what the Most High God brought from it, brought to the law, or take from it, right?
That's right.
No man can do that, right?
That's what the word disannul it means. It means to stop. You cannot stop this. You cannot add. You cannot take away from the covenants that the Most High God has already promised to His people. And that's what Christians constantly do. Putting people, adding people in there, taking some people away. No, you cannot do that. It's already established.
Because in the same chapter, when it's talking about these Gentiles, watch how if a Christian, if you just say, no, we're going to read down to verse 16. Just cut this thing to, look, and they can't get around this, man. Read this up.
Verse 16. Now to Abraham and his seed.
It says seed. Watch it. It's going to explain itself. Watch it. Read.
Were the promises made.
Uh-huh.
He said not, and to seeds as of many, but as of one, and to thy seed, which is Christ.
Did y'all catch that, man? It didn't say a whole bunch of different seeds.
That's right.
It said one. And what? And what? Who is Christ's people, man? You can't get around it, man.
Because remember, Abraham had many sons.
For real.
All nations don't come out of Abraham, so you can even cut a Christian on that. Abraham had many sons, but it's specifically saying a seed, a specific seed. Going back to Romans 9 and 4. Yeah, y'all know the precepts, brothers already know. And many other precepts as well. Even going back to Genesis chapter 17.
Big comment on that. Let's go back to Hebrews chapter 7 and verse 13. Like we just read, Hebrews 7 and 12, for the priesthood being changed, there is made a necessity, a change also of the law. And we went into the change of what law did we have to change? It was a sacrificial law because we wasn't getting it, man. Right? Read it up.
This is the book of Hebrews chapter 7 and verse 13. For he of whom these things are spoken pertaining to another tribe, of which no man gave attendance at the altar.
So guess what? No man gave attendance at the altar. Guess what? That the tribe of Judah will be the ones, person from the lineage of the tribe of Judah is going to be bringing offering for the children of Israel. Those things wasn't at the altar. Nobody seen those things, right? Because the Levites was the one we just went into there. How the Levites was the one that was, we read precept after precept after precept, showing how the Levites was the one that was bringing offering for all the children of Israel, right? Read on up.
Verse 14. For it is evident that our Lord sprang out of Judah,
Read.
of which tribes Moses spake concerning Salakia, spake nothing concerning priesthood.
So guess what? Moses say nothing that the priesthood is going to come out of the tribe of Judah, man. Let's go back and go to Sirach chapter 45, verse 24. Sirach chapter 25, verse 24, man. When you get there, I'll just read it.
Sirach 25.
No, Shalaki. 45, 24. Shalaki. Shalaki. Sirach 45, 24, man. When you get there, I'll just read it.
This is the book of Sirach, chapter 45 and verse 24. Therefore was there a covenant of peace made with him,
Read this up.
that he should be the chief of the sanctuary,
So guess what? This is going to Christ, that he's going to be the chief of the sanctuary, man. Right? Read.
and of his people,
And of his people, read.
and that he and his posterity should have the dignity of the priesthood forever.
This is going into our Lord, man. Yahweh Shah, man. Right? Read.
Verse 25, according to the covenant made with David, son of Jesse,
Son of Jesse, read.
of the tribe of Judah,
Read.
that the inheritance of the king should be to his posterity alone.
It's going to be to Christ's prosperity alone, man. Read.
So the inheritance of Aaron should also be unto his seed.
So this is how the thing that Christ took over. How it was for Aaron and his seed, this is how Christ is going to have to be for the nation of Israel, right? So get some more on this. Psalm chapter 89 and verse 19. Psalm chapter 89 and verse 19. Get there, I'll just read.
This is the book of Psalms, chapter 89 and verse 19. Then thou spakest in the vision to thy Holy One, and saidest, I have laid help upon one that is mighty.
Read.
I have exalted one chosen out of the people.
So he exalted one chosen out of the people, man. Read.
I have found David my servant.
This is going into Christ, man, because we know it speaks on David, but in this aspect it's going into Christ, right? Read.
With my holy oil have I anointed him,
And the Lord anointed Christ, man, right? Read.
with whom my hand shall be established. My arm also shall strengthen him.
And he said, and his arm also going to strengthen, man, Yahweh Shai, right? Read on. Jump down to verse 26.
Verse 26. He shall cry unto me, thou art my father, my God, and the rock of my salvation.
Read.
Also I will make him my firstborn, higher than the kings of the earth.
Guess what, man? Christ is, hey, it is what it is, man. Hey, he the king, right? Read.
Verse 28. My mercy will I keep for him forevermore, and my covenant shall stand fast with him. His seed also will I make to endure forever, and his throne as the days of heaven.
This is going into Yahweh Shai, man. Like you say, it speaks on King David, but this is also, like you say, it's going into Yahweh Shai, man. And their seed is going into what? It's going into Israel, man. We will have the rulership on the planet. Guess what? We're going to be joint heirs with Christ, but Christ's going to be the king, man, over all of us, right? Let's go back to Hebrews chapter 7. Hebrews chapter 7 and verse 15.
This is the book of Hebrews chapter 7 and verse 15. And it is yet far more evident, for that after the similitude of Melchizedek, there ariseth another priest.
So yes, after the similitude of Melchizedek, there arises another priest. We're going to touch on it in a second, man. Let's read on.
Verse 16. Who is made not after the law of a carnal commandment, but after the power of an endless life.
So the order of Melchizedek, guess what, man? Y'all keep in mind, those priests, they received tithes, but they died. And this priesthood right here, it had power of an endless life.
That's right.
This is keeping in mind what the order of Melchizedek was going into. This priest had the power of endless life, right? Verse 17.
Verse 17, for he testified, thou art a priest forever, after the order of Melchizedek.
Read on up.
For there is verily a disannulling of the commandment going before, for the weaknesses and unprofitableness thereof.
Let's go to John chapter 3 and verse 30. Book of John chapter 3 and verse 30. Get there, let's read.
This is the book of John chapter 3 and verse 30. He must increase, but I must decrease.
So guess what? This is going into one and the same that we was reading in Hebrews chapter 7, man. How something must increase, how other one decrease. Now, keep in mind, it said the less is the better.
Mm-hmm.
So one must decrease and the other one must increase, right? Going in and taking over the priesthood, right? Read on.
Verse 31. He that cometh from above is above all. He that is of the earth is earthly.
So he that comes from above is he above all, right? But he that comes from earth is earthly. Read.
And cometh of the earth. He that cometh from heaven is above all.
Mm-hmm.
And what he had seen and heard, that he testified, and no man receiveth his testimony.
Read.
He that had received his testimony has set to his seal that God is true.
Because guess what? He's the one literally speaking God's words. So whatever he say, this is literally from the mouth of the Most High God. No different. Right? Read.
Verse 34. For he whom God had sent speaketh the words of God.
Mm-hmm.
For God giveth not the Spirit by measure unto him. The Father loveth the Son, and had given all things unto his hand.
So guess what? He given all things unto Yahweh's hand, man. Read.
He that believeth on the Son had everlasting life.
Read on.
And he that believeth not the Son shall not see life. But the wrath of God abideth on him.
It is what it is, man. Let's go back to Hebrews chapter 7, man. That's why.
Go ahead. No, go ahead.
That's why he had power of an endless life. Because the Most High God gave all things to him, man, right? The Most High God made him, and he made all things. Right? Go ahead,
No, go ahead. You touch on it.
Right? What we at? Verse 19? Hebrews chapter 7, verse 19.
This is the book of Hebrews, chapter 7 and verse 19.
Mm-hmm.
For the law made nothing perfect. What law?
Sacrificial law.
All praise.
Become.
But the bringing in of a better hope did.
What is the hope? Precept. 10 and 6. No, I ain't no 10 and 6.
Hebrews 10. Yeah.
No, let's try Hebrews 11 and 1.
This is the book of Hebrews, chapter 11 and verse 1. Now faith is the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen.
So this is the hope that we get, the things that we can't see, the things that Yahweh doing when we throwing them prayers up to the Most High, and we got an intercession, and we got a mediator between us and the Most High.
That's right.
He's making you pray, oh Lord, just give me the S550 billion, and Yahweh says, no, he don't need that. No, he don't need that either. He can have this, no, he don't need this. He can have it, no, he don't need this either. Right?
We say just bless him with a hoot rod to get back and forth to Sabbath class.
For real. Read on now.
This is the book of Hebrews, chapter 7 and verse 20. And inasmuch as not without an oath he was made priest. For those priests were made without an oath. But this with an oath by him that said unto him, the Lord swear and would not repent, Thou art a priest forever after the order of Melchizedek.
Let's go get what that means. Make sure y'all write this down. Psalms 110, verse 1 through 4, right there beside it, man. That's where we finna go next. Psalm chapter 110, verse 1 through 4. Shalom. You get there, I read it.
This is the book of Psalms, chapter 110 and verse 1. The Lord said unto my Lord, sit thou at my right hand, until I make thine enemies thy footstool. The Lord shall send the rod of thy strength out of Zion. Rule thou in the midst of thine enemies.
So he said, the Lord said unto my Lord. King David said, the Lord said unto my Lord. Who is King David's Lord? Yahushua, right?
And who is Yahushua's Lord? The Most High.
The Most High, right? So keep it in the context, right? Read.
Thy people shall be willing in the day of thy power, in the beauties of holiness from the womb of the morning. Thou hast the dew of thy youth.
Read on.
The Lord has sworn and will not repent.
It's saying the same thing, man. Read.
Thou art a priest forever after the order of Melchizedek.
So who is the priest forever after the order of Melchizedek?
Christ.
That's right.
It makes it plain.
That's right.
So I would say make sure you write this down beside that, vice versa, right? Go back to Hebrews chapter 7, man. It said the same thing, right? We're gonna start at verse 22.
This is the book of Hebrews, chapter 7 and verse 22. But so much was Yahushua made a surety of a better testament.
What is that saying? I need a little bit more. Say he made a better testament.
Testament is another word for what?
Testimony.
Testimony is like another commandment.
Writing. What is it?
A covenant.
Okay.
An agreement.
Okay.
What you want out?
Go to Galatians chapter 3 and verse 18. Watch this, y'all. I'm show y'all a little something.
This is the book of Galatians, chapter 3 and verse 18. For if the inheritance be of the law, it is no more of promise. But God gave it to Abraham by promise.
Read.
Wherefore then serveth the law. It was added because of transgressions, till the seed should come to whom the promise was made. And it was ordained by angels in the hand of a mediator.
Okay, so it said, this is heavy, man. Look.
That's right.
It said, wherefore then serveth the law. It was added because of transgression. What was added? When was it added?
Come on.
Come on, man. We on fire. Come on, keep that fire lit.
Yeah, when was it added? When was it established
That's
or
right.
instituted? When was the first time the Most High? Say it again. Adam and Eve. Remember?
Yeah.
Yes. We done touched on this. Hey, I know I would hit on this thing.
That's y'all. I guess we
got to, man.
Let's go get it. Genesis chapter. Chapter.
You know what we talking about when we read this thing, huh? Genesis chapter 3 and verse.
Genesis chapter 3 and verse 21. If you want to get straight to the point.
Yeah. Thanks, Al. This is the book of Genesis. Remember, this is going into Adam taking the fruit, taking the knowledge of the other nations, and then doing what? Giving it and bringing it back to Adam.
Matter of fact, go to Genesis 3 and 10, then we're going to jump over.
Okay.
Because then I want to get a little context.
Yeah.
And then not a whole lot, because we don't want to go too far.
This is the book of Genesis, chapter 3 and verse 10. And he said, I heard thy voice in the garden, and I was afraid, because I was naked, and I hid myself.
So he said he was naked and he hid himself. Who made him naked?
Sin.
Sin. So he literally was in sin. Right? Now, we jump over. No, let's read on.
Yeah. Verse 11, and he said, who told thee that thou wast naked? Hast thou eaten of the tree whereof I commanded thee that?
He gave him one straight commandment. If you eat off this tree, then you gonna die. Right? The Lord told him not to do this. That's why the Lord came right back to the saint. Who told you was naked? Because the only way you'll know you naked, or the only way you'll know that you in sin, you had to eat of that tree, right? Everybody know the story, right?
So even reading down, we know when we break God's commandments, what judgment comes behind that. So now going into the judgment, the Most High God taking Adam out of the garden. Now we have to work for the things that we need. Even sisters having menstrual cycles, having birth pains. Those are the judgments for breaking God's commandments. Now going into verse 21, he's given us that what? That time that to atone for.
That's right.
Verse
21.
21. Verse 21, and unto Adam also and to his wife did the Lord make coats of skin and clothe them.
So how do you cover the nakedness, or how do you cover your sin?
That's right.
With a sacrifice. You have to be clothed, right? With some kind of sacrifice. If you naked, that means you're going into sin. You have to be clothed. This was the first sacrifice that they ever had in the Bible.
That's right. This is the institution of the sacrificial law.
And we know there's an institution of the sacrificial law because when you go into Genesis chapter 4 and you read down, they was given what? Offerings.
That's right. Verse 3.
Y'all get that? Let's go back.
You see it out all first. Coats of skin.
Where we at? Galatians?
Yeah.
20, 19.
Yeah, 3 and 19. Get there, I'll just read.
This is the book of Galatians, chapter 3 and verse 19. Wherefore then serveth the law. It was added because of transgressions. Till the seed should come to whom the promise was made. And it was ordained by angels in the hand of a mediator.
Which is Christ, man, read.
Now a mediator is not a mediator of one, but God is one.
Read.
Is the law then against the promises of God? God forbid.
So yes, plain.
That's right.
Right, read.
For if there had been a law given which could have given life, verily righteousness should have been by the law.
So guess what, man? There was no law. Guess what? No sacrificial law that would have gave life to us. None of the sacrificial, because it was nothing to atone for that. After so many times, the Lord said, man, look, I don't need these animals no more, man. That's enough. You know how people say, no. Well, Dad, I'm sorry. No, I ain't this sorry stuff. I don't need this sorry no more. Something got to happen. Right? Read.
Verse 22. But the scripture had concluded all under sin.
Read.
That the promise by faith of Yahushua Christ might be given to them that believe.
Guess what, man? That's why we walk upon. That's what goes your faith, your grace, all these things go one and the same.
That's right. And belief as well, man.
That's right. Read.
And like we said, we all, us in the truth, we all see faith, belief. All those are what? Are action words. To Christians, those are just mouth lip service. So that's the difference between brothers and sisters in the truth and people in Christianity. Verse 23. But before faith came, we were kept under the law, shut up until the faith which should afterwards be revealed.
Shoot.
Who is faith? All praise.
And who was the mediator? What precept brothers had for the mediator? Anybody?
I got 1 Timothy 2 and 5.
Big con on there. All praise, brother in the spirit. Make sure y'all write that down beside verse 20. 1 Timothy 2 and 5. Because when we go back over there to Hebrews chapter 7, it's going to start talking about the mediator. All of these verses, they go back and forth. While we was going back and forth with Hebrews chapter 7, and we was going in to break it down to explaining what these mean.
Who got the precept showing that Christ is faith? Brothers got that thing, man. Real quick.
Is it Daniel 9 and 11?
Uh-uh.
It's not Daniel 9 and 11.
find it. I'm thinking about grace in John chapter 1, verse 15. I have to find it face so I can brothers and sisters. I'm thinking about the one in John chapter 1, verse 15. Let me see. For the law was given by Moses, but grace and truth came by Christ. I have to find it faith.
While you thinking about it, let's go back to Galatians right quick. We're going to touch on something. Galatians chapter 24, chapter 3 and verse 24.
This is the book of Galatians chapter 3 and verse 24.
Read.
Wherefore the law was our schoolmaster to bring us unto Christ, that we might be justified by faith.
Read.
But after that faith is come, we are no longer under a schoolmaster.
Who know how to break that down? Man. Real, man.
You thought he was going to stand up and give a presentation?
Yeah.
I sure
Go ahead, Brother Keenan.
Let me use the restroom real quick. I'll come back with it.
James 2:17.
Is it saying Christ? No, not. I want the one. It's one I'm looking for that say Christ.
Oh, to say
I probably misspoke. I'm thinking about John
So
1 and 15.
breaking it down is, the word for the law was our schoolmaster at first. So by the law, we did everything that was given us commandments to do. That was righteousness, right?
No. A little bit more. Really.
I ain't finished.
Go ahead. Well, go ahead.
So, I was saying with the schoolmaster, he taught us.
He's
Yeah.
going too far away
Yeah,
from it.
yeah.
That's why I stopped you. That's why I know you want to finish, but you're going too far away from it.
Mm.
It's going into the sacrificial, man. That's what you should have said off the top, man.
Yeah,
You ain't got that. You trying to fish. So basically goes into, he said that Christ is a schoolmaster. Guess why? I'm going to give you an example. Go to John chapter 8, verse 1. This makes you right. Example, John 8 and 1. And we're going to read down. Now Christ come, we not up under this schoolmaster. Because he can do, he finna do an attribute that no man had done in this instant. Read through that.
This is the book of John, chapter 8 and verse 1. Yahushua went unto the Mount of Olives, and early in the morning he came again into the temple. And all the people came unto him, and he sat down and taught them.
Read.
And the scribes and Pharisees brought unto him a woman taken in adultery. And when they had set her in the midst,
Read.
they say unto him, Master, this woman was taken in adultery in the very act.
So they caught the woman in adultery. What would happen if somebody commit adultery? What would happen? She would be put to death, right?
That's right.
Read.
Now Moses in the law commanded us that such should be stoned. But what sayest thou? This they said, tempting him.
They was tempting him. They said, Moses said you were supposed to be stoned. Well, so what you finna do, right? They tempted him, man. Read.
That they might have to accuse him. But Yahushua stooped down and with his finger wrote on the ground as though he heard them not.
So he looking at them like, man, look, these fools think they catching me up. Man, you gotta think about it. This Yahushua, man.
That's right.
The master teacher. I'm talking about the master teacher, man. For real, man. Read on.
Verse 7. So when they continued asking him, he lifted up himself and said unto them, He that is without sin among you, let him first cast a stone at her. And again he stooped down and wrote on the ground.
Read.
And they which heard it, being convicted by their own conscience.
So guess what? Christ just spoke just or something just real small to him. He like, you know what? You ain't got no sin. Cast a stone at her then.
That's right.
You know, y'all tempted me. But if you ain't got no sin, we want y'all to do it. Right? Read.
And they which heard it, being convicted by their own conscience, went out one by one.
They went out one by one. Read.
Beginning at the eldest, even unto the last.
Read.
And Yahushua was left alone, and the woman standing in the midst.
Read on.
When Yahushua had lifted up himself, and saw none but the woman, he said unto her, Woman, where are those thine accusers?
Read.
Had no man condemned thee?
She
She said, No man, Lord. And Yahushua said unto her, Neither do I condemn thee.
Read.
Go and sin no more.
So going into this, Christ was the only man. He was the only man in this Bible that told one person, "No, you forgiven for sin." He was, guess what? We're not up under the schoolmaster of a sacrificial. Guess what? Christ can, he ain't give no atonement. If y'all see that, he ain't give no. He spoke it out of his mouth that she was forgiven.
That's right.
That's the schoolmaster that we not up under no more. That's the sacrifice that we have to give. We ain't got to give those sacrifices. Christ is the one that is the forgiving of the sin. Y'all get that? Let's go back to Hebrews chapter 7.
Remember,
Also, what? Sin and death. Because, hey, by that sin, she should have been put to death.
That's right.
That's a good point, a great point, man. Hey, even on that last point, verse 11, and sin no more. Christ was literally telling them, don't break the commandments again. So when people are telling them, Christ came to redeem me from the law, so why he tell his sister, don't hit the commandments again?
For real.
I mean, come on, man.
Big con on that. Let's go back to Hebrews chapter 7 and verse 23.
This is the book of Hebrews, chapter 7 and verse 23. And they truly were many priests, because they were not suffered to continue by reason of death.
Read.
But this man, because he continued ever, had an unchangeable priesthood.
So guess what? It keep talking about Christ having an unchangeable priesthood, man. Keep in mind, we talking about the King of Kings, man. We talking about the Lord of Lords, man. Let's read verse 23 again.
The book of Hebrews, chapter 7 and verse 23. And they truly were many priests, because they were not suffered to continue by reason of death.
So guess what? It was many priests. It was a lot of priests came, but hey, through that lineage of Aaron in the priesthood. And guess what? And it was a lot of priests, hey, with the other tribes too. Guess what? And they was doing sacrificing to idols and different stuff like that. It was many priests, but some for the good and some for the bad, right? But read on.
Verse 24, but this man, because he continued ever, had an unchangeable priesthood.
Said, but this man had an unchangeable priesthood going into Christ, man. Read.
Wherefore he is able also to save them to the uttermost that come unto God by him, seeing he ever liveth to make intercession for them.
And we covered that what in John chapter 8, right? He made an intercession for that woman, because they could have very well, by the law, that Moses written down, that woman was supposed to die. Y'all get that? She was supposed to die, but she didn't die because Christ, guess what? He made the intercession for her. He was the sacrifice for her, so they couldn't, hey, destroy her butt right then and there, right? And just like we ain't being destroyed right now, because Christ is what? Was the intercession for us, right?
That's right.
Read on.
Verse 26, for such an high priest became us, who is holy, harmless, undefiled, separate from sinners, and made higher than the heavens.
And he also was made higher than the heavens. Going into what? No. Say he was made higher than the heavens. What is that going into?
We gotta pick brothers' brains.
That's going into rulership over the king of the earth.
No.
No.
Not it. No, that's not it. He's higher than the heavens. He's over the angels.
Oh, no.
Go to Hebrews 1. Go to Hebrews 1, verse 4. Get straight to it.
This is the book of Hebrews, chapter 1 and verse 4. Being made so much better than the angels, as he had by an inheritance obtained a more excellent name than they.
So he obtained a more excellent name than they. Read.
For unto which of the angels said he at any time, Thou art my son.
Read.
This day have I begotten thee. And again, I will be to him a father, and he shall be to me a son.
Verse 6, the point.
And again, when he bringeth in the first begotten into the world, he said, and let all the angels of God worship him.
So guess what? He was made higher than the heavens by all the angels. Guess what? They even had to bow down to him too. Right? They the Most High, then is Yahushua. guess what? Even the host of heaven, hey, you had to recognize. Guess what? This was the Son of God too. Just like we got to recognize that this, but Yahweh Shah, the Son of God, the angel have to recognize this too, right? You guess I'm up.
Go ahead.
Let's go back. Let's read it again.
This is the book of Hebrews, chapter 7 and verse 26. For such an high priest became us, who is holy, harmless, undefiled, separate from sinners,
He's separate from sinners, read.
and made higher than the heavens.
And the Most High God even established his throne. Guess what? He was higher than the heavens, even over the angels. Because guess what? We know that in the rulership of this planet, guess what? Just like even have Abraham, he was the Most High God called Abraham the possessors of the heaven and earth. But who did Abraham, when he seen them angels, what happened when he seen the angels? He bowed his face to the ground. But in this aspect with Christ, guess what? He don't do that with the angels. The angels do that to him. Y'all get that? Let me see. Do I want to pull that or not? No, I ain't gonna pull it. Let's go. Let's read on now.
Verse 27. Who needed not daily as those high priests.
Who said who needed not daily? What is daily? What daily is going into? The daily sacrifice, right? Read.
To offer up sacrifice.
Uh-huh.
First for his own sins.
So guess what? Christ didn't have to make sacrifice for his own sin. Why did he not make sacrifice for his own sin?
Because he what?
Because he did no sin.
What's the precept?
For real.
You know, we want to talk with precepts to program brothers to go to these things, man. Who got the precepts? Come on, man. Y'all know these things, man. Brothers touch on these things from time to time in class. Maybe let me know some brothers don't be watching the classes, man. Brothers gotta watch the thing. Hebrews 5 and 3. 1 Peter 2 and 2. 2 and 22. This is the book of 1 Peter chapter 2 and verse, I'm going to start at verse 21. For even hereunto were ye called, because Christ also suffered for us, leaving us an example, that ye shall follow his steps, who did no sin, neither was guile found in his mouth. So Christ didn't commit any sin. Even 1 Peter chapter 1 verse 19. But with the precious blood of Christ as a lamb without blemish and without spot. Meaning Christ had no sin, saying the same thing 1 Peter 2 and 22 is saying. So brothers, make sure y'all write these things down. Next to Hebrews 7 and 27. Go ahead, Doc.
Let's go back to Hebrews chapter 7 and verse 27.
This is the book of Hebrews chapter 7 and verse 27. Who needed not daily as those high priests to offer up sacrifice. First for his own sins, and then for the people's.
Read.
For this he did once, when he offered up himself.
So guess what, man? The sacrifice that Christ did was sacrificing himself, not no animals. And that same sacrifice there, guess what? He take it. That's why the change of the law for the sacrifice, he taking all those things away because he gave himself. Right? Read on now.
Verse 28, for the law maketh men high priests, which have infirmity.
So it said, but the law maketh men the high priests, which had infirmities. But read on.
But the word of the oath.
But the word of the oath, the promises that he swore unto Abraham, or he swore unto Melchizedek. Read. Which was
since the law maketh the Son, who is consecrated forevermore.
He said the law. He said the oath which since the law maketh the Son who is consecrated, maketh the Son what? The high priest.
That's right.
Right?
I'm going to read verse 28 again. I don't know if brothers catch. For the law maketh men high priests, which have infirmity. Infirmity is going into what?
Sin.
That's right. Going into sin. Meaning high priests, they had to offer up sacrifices even for themselves. But Christ did it once for the whole nation of Israel. Remember, he had no sin. So that's the difference between that. Go ahead, Doc.
Come, man. Read it out.
Verse 28, for the law maketh men high priests, which have infirmity, But the word of the oath, which was since the law, maketh the Son who is consecrated forevermore.
Forevermore. Chapter 8, verse 1. We almost there.
This is the book of Hebrews, chapter 8 and verse 1. Now of the things which we have spoken, this is the sum. We have such an high priest who is set on the right hand of the throne of the majesty in the heavens.
So guess what? We got such a high priest. Guess what? It's no high priest in that can sit on the throne of the king. It's right there beside the Most High God.
That's right.
No high priest can do that. Right? Read on.
A minister of the sanctuary.
He's a minister of the sanctuary.
And of the true tabernacle. This is covering a lot of bases that we don't read today. Right? Read. Which the Lord pitched, and not man.
And guess what? It said the Lord pitched these things, not man. Not pitched no tent. The Lord made this tabernacle, man. Because the tabernacle was going into our first sanctuary that we had. Right? But read on.
Verse 3. For every high priest is ordained to offer gifts and sacrifices. Wherefore it is of necessity that this man have somewhat also to offer.
So guess what? All the priests, guess what they had? They was giving gifts and sacrifice. We said, but this man had to give a gift also, right? Read on.
Verse 4. For if he were on earth, he should not be a priest, seeing that there are priests that offer gifts according to the law.
So guess what? If he was walking on earth, he's not going to give gifts according to how Aaron and Aaron lineage, how the Levites do. He's not going to give. He's not according to how the Most High God he ordained Christ, or he ordained Melchizedek. He won't be a priest like them because they were supposed to be atonement with animals. Christ wasn't going to never atone with no animals because he was the lamb that was going to be given, right? But read on. Watch this.
Verse 5. Who served unto the example and shadow of heavenly things.
Because what Aaron and the Levites was trying to do was a shadow of heavenly things, man. Read.
As Moses was admonished of God.
Read.
When he was about to make the tabernacle. For see, said he, that thou make all things according to the pattern showed to thee in the mount.
So guess what? He showed Moses the pattern of how, guess what, to make offerings. Because every offering and sacrifice, it was wood laid in a certain order. You couldn't just go and just throw a pile of wood up and just make a sacrifice. That ain't how they went. Everything the Most High God does is decency and in order.
That's right.
It's never not decency and order. When we go outside of it, we always get ourselves in trouble. Right? Read.
Verse 6. But now had he obtained a more excellent ministry.
Read.
By how much also he is the mediator of a better covenant.
So guess what? Christ is a mediator of a better covenant, man. Read.
Which was established upon better promises.
And it was established upon better promises. Why? Because those animals and turtle doves never made us clean.
That's right.
It never gave us righteousness, and it never saved us from our sin. Because what will we do? We will continually keep on sinning over and over and over again. Guess what? In Christ, even though he's been the ultimate sacrifice, guess what? He was the last sacrifice to give so we can have grace, so the Lord can divide who's for him or not.
Let's get this precept real quick.
Yeah.
The book of Sirach, chapter 35 and verse 1. No, I always bring this out a lot. I always bring this out a lot, man. Certain precepts, like you say, brothers have to be in tune. Knowing the brothers that teach, knowing what precepts they like to bring out. This is the book of Sirach, chapter 35 and verse 1. He that keepeth the law bringeth offerings enough. He that taketh heed to the commandments offereth a peace offering. So when brothers and sisters are keeping the commandments, it's counted as an offering. Brothers and sisters, see that? Go ahead. Verse 2. He that requited a good turn offereth fine flour, and he that giveth alms sacrificeth praise. To depart from wickedness is a thing pleasing to the Lord, and to forsake unrighteousness is a propitiation. Thou shalt not appear empty before the Lord, for all these things are to be done because of the commandment. The offering of the righteous maketh the altar fat, and the sweet savor thereof is before the Most High.
Big con on that. The last part, Hebrews chapter 9 and verse 9. This explains the gifts, and this explains what Hebrews chapter 8 is going into.
This is the book of Hebrews chapter 9 and verse 9, which was a figure for the time then present, in which were offered both gifts and sacrifices, that could not make him that did the service perfect, as pertaining to the conscience.
That's why it said that Christ wouldn't, if Christ walked the earth, he wouldn't be a priest. He wouldn't be a priest. Not according to how the law was given to Moses, how the law was given to Aaron, what he was supposed to do. Because guess what? It never made us perfect. But what Christ is doing, he laid his life to make us perfect, right? Read.
Verse 10, which stood only in meat and drinks. Meat and drink what? All praise, man. And divers washings and carnal ordinances imposed on them until the time of reformation.
You see how this goes? How those offerings did? It's just like you say. This explains what scriptures is going into. Like you say, precept upon precept, line upon line, explains how it goes, right? Read.
But Christ being come and high priest of good things to come, by a greater and more perfect tabernacle, not made with hands. That is to say, not of this building.
Not of this building, right?
Neither by the blood of goats and calves, but by his own blood he entered in once into the holy place.
Read.
Having obtained eternal redemption for us.
For us, read on.
For if the blood of bulls and of goats and of the ashes of an heifer, sprinkling the unclean, sanctified to the purifying of the flesh.
Because the flesh, what? Profited nothing, man. Right? Read.
How much more shall the blood of Christ, who through the eternal Spirit offered himself without spot to God, purge your conscience from dead works to serve the living God.
So this is what Christ came to do. He came to purge our conscience. The evil thoughts, the evil ways, to bring us back to the Most High God. Right? Read.
Verse 15. And for this cause he is the mediator of the New Testament.
So for this cause, Christ is the mediator for the New Testament, not Paul, man. Right? Read.
That by means of death, for the redemption of the transgressions that were under the first testament. Man, that thing there heavy.
I'm trying to tell you.
That thing is heavy, man. Who was under the first testament?
Israel.
Israel, man. I mean, this thing is plain. Testament is going into what? A covenant. Even going into what? Romans chapter 9, verse 4. And many other various precepts, man. Like we say, we're teaching brothers to literally break this thing down piece by piece, because where brothers get caught, you try to read the whole scripture and break it all. No, you have to break it down piece by piece or to bring confusion to you. Read these things.
Verse 15.
Verse 15 from the top. And for this cause he is the mediator of the New Testament by that means of death, for the redemption of the transgressions that were under the first testament, they which are called might receive the promise of eternal inheritance.
So guess what? This is the reason why the order of Melchizedek, or going back into the reign of Christ, taking over rulership of all things, man, to put things back in order again, man. So guess what? For us to receive, guess what? The eternal inheritance, man. To coming back to the Most High God, man. Got anything else up? With that, we're going to say shalom.
Shalom.
Thank you, brothers and sisters, man, for tuning in. Like and share the video. Help us push this truth around the four corners of the earth, man.
Now go ahead. You already know. Got a little scoff on the video.
Bring it out.
It said, you going to only get good vibes from this channel, brother, or whatever. It's not talking about the sacrificial laws in James 2 and 10.
Let's go with it. Tell them more, what is his precept?
Yeah, for real. What's your precepts on it? Good vibes.
You
better be keeping good commandments.
Right.
That's what your behind better be doing. Hey, we take on all scoffers.
For real.
We tell them, say, we got it.
They'll tell them what precept he got.
What the precepts? We say James 2:10. Let's see what we
Yeah,
got.
we need to get a call in line for them.
This is the book of James, chapter 2 and verse 10. For whosoever shall keep the whole law and yet offend in one point, he is guilty of all.
Well, tell them break it, can brothers break it down.
That's right. Even like the brother was saying, we know it's going into the sacrificial law because even with Romans chapter 7, verse 1, let's get that. Go to Romans chapter 7, verse 1 again. So you have to explain this. This is the book of Romans chapter 7 and verse 1. Know ye not, brethren, for I speak to them that know the law, how that the law had dominion over a man as long as he liveth. So you don't understand what you're talking about, brother, because it's literally saying it plain. We have to keep God's commandments. We get another precept. Let's go to the book of Romans, chapter 2 and verse 13. The book of Romans, chapter 2, verse 13. For not the hearers of the law are just before God, but the doers of the law shall be justified. So if you're saying that we do not have to keep God's laws, that will make these scriptures a contradiction.
That's right.
That's why you say you don't have the understanding. So even with all the precepts Captain Jerubal just went through, it's literally showing you that it is going into the sacrificial law. Like you say, a lot of times our people want to just stay in sin, man. He say Romans 3 and 20. Well, we get that too. Captain Yara on there. We said no brother's going to be on there cutting his behind up. Romans chapter 3 verse 20. Therefore by the deeds of the law there shall no flesh be justified in his sight. For by the law is the knowledge of sin. So you read the first part, but you didn't read the second part. The second part is giving you understanding. So it's letting you know, we know that guess what? Sin is the wages of death. We know sin is the breaking of God's commandments. So what are you saying? We don't have to keep the commandments? And that's the confusion that Christianity brings to our people.
And that's the main reason why we went through Galatians,
That's
and
right.
Romans,
All
and
these
Colossians,
That's right.
and James. Why? Because guess what? We knew a brother just like brother online. He got that scalper mentality. If a brother just learned, if you learned the law, guess what? You wouldn't have no discrepancies over it. It should be no problem. Right?
Yeah, we heard your name, brother, but did you get those precepts that we got and wrote down for you? Like I say, answer those things, man.
Let's get a law right quick.
I know Sister Odell says, I'm going to want a breakdown of Colossians chapter 2, verse 16. That is a deep script. First of all, you can go to Ezekiel chapter 45, verse 17 as well.
That's right. Because it's going into, it's saying the same exact thing. So let's go back and look.
How long you want to?
Go to Leviticus. Just get one. Leviticus chapter 17, verse 11.
This is the book of Leviticus, chapter 17 and verse
14.
Verse 14. The book of Leviticus, chapter 17 and verse 14. For it is the life of all the flesh, of all flesh. The blood of it is for the life thereof. Therefore I said unto the children of Israel, ye shall not eat the blood of no manner of flesh.
So guess what? If a brother and sister eating a steak, it's supposed to be cooked all the way through. You cannot eat blood. No bloody meat, man.
That's right.
Esau don't give a damn about what they eat. You as an Israelite, you better cook that steak all the way through. Don't eat no blood, man.
Esau's stomach, they can take that because they the beast of the earth, man. Hey, we not built like that, man. Y'all better not be trying to eat that stuff, man. Oh, I want it because it's a little tender. No. That thing is a lot raw and bloody. Don't do that.
Why do we don't eat blood?
That's life.
And it says in what verse? Jump up to verse 11.
This is the book of Leviticus, chapter 17 and verse 11. For the life of the flesh is in the blood.
That's why we don't eat blood, man. Because the life of the flesh is in the blood, man. Why the Lord said we don't eat no blood, man. No bloody meat. We cook it all the way through.
Boy, say. You know, hey, we're gonna let them lines out on your behind, boy. Israel don't be playing no games when they coming, boy. Boy, he on it. Israel's something else.
You finish 14 now.
Verse 14. For it is the life of all flesh. The blood of it is for the life thereof. Therefore I said unto the children of Israel, ye shall eat the blood of no manner of flesh, for the life of all flesh is the blood thereof. Whosoever eateth it shall be cut off.
Said in the same verse too. Brothers and sisters on the coming board, like and share the video. And whoever's scoffing on the line, man, guess what? Our number's in the description below. Hey, we looked at our wrist. We got time today.
Yeah, for real.
So, guess man, with that. Also, we got in 2 weeks is Memorial
Blowing the
blowing the
trumpet.
trumpet, and
New moon.
yeah, 2 weeks is Memorial blowing the trumpet, and New Moon which is ours. What month will it be?
The brothers know.
Come on, brothers, man.
Have to be
About to
in
ask the sisters what month it is, sisters. What?
Who? Say it again, sis. Say it again. Ethanus.
Ethanus.
What number month?
What number?
7.
7.
Oh,
God dang it,
praise.
man.
That's right.
Oh, man.
That's right.
Yes, it does.
I know.
Yeah, it does.
Definitely does.
Just like octo means 8,
Octo means 8.
nov means 9, and deca
Deca
means
means
10.
10.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's
So,
an easy clue.
and after that, like you said, we got Memorial blowing the trumpets coming up. We got Day of Atonement. Hey, this is the holy of the days, man. Right? And then also we got the Feast of Tabernacle coming up. Get your tents, and don't get it bent. And with that, say shalom.
Shalom.